If you're struggling in academic task 1, especially if there is a lot of data, then you're in the right place, because in this video I'm gonna be discussing bar charts that contain a lot of data. And remember that bar charts is one of the most common questions in academic task 1. So first, let's have a look at the question. The following chart provides information regarding the fertility in births per woman in 6 Gulf states from 1990 to 2000. Write a report for a university lecture describing the information below. You should write at least 150 words. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. Now take a look at this graph. Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia. There are 6 states and the years 1990 and 2000. Here the heading is given fertility rate Gulf countries 1990 to 2000. So the first step is writing an introduction. Now remember, the introduction is simply paraphrasing the question statement, nothing else. You shouldn't include any additional data or anything. Just paraphrase the question statement. So I'll be writing here. The chart represents changes in the fertility rates of women in 6 different Gulf countries over the period of 30 years. Now see how I have paraphrased it. The following chart I written chart provides, I written represents information regarding the fertility in births per woman. I simply written changes in the fertility rate of women. Both have the same meaning, I just paraphrased it. In 6 Gulf states from 1990 to 2000. I have written in 6 different Gulf countries over the period of 30 years. It's the same meaning as the previous line. So here we've written an effective introduction. Now is time for the overview or the conclusion. Now you can write it anywhere. You can write it immediately after the introduction or at the last after the body paragraphs. But I would advise you to write it after the introduction, because let's say that you run out of time and you miss the conclusion, then it will result in a band score decrease of at least 0.5. But if you miss a line or two or a body paragraph, it won't affect your score as much as if you missed the conclusion. So write the conclusion after the introduction. So here I'll first analyze the chart. Let's analyze it. Okay, when we have a look at the chart, we can see that there is one thing in common in all countries, and that is that the fertility rate decreases in 2000 in comparison to 1990 in all the countries. You can see it yourself. The birth rate is decreasing. So here we can write first point. Overall, it can be seen that there were major falls in birth rates in all 6 countries. But we shouldn't be writing only 1 point. At least 2 points should be included if the chart contains a lot of data. So what can we conclude as the other point? Let's again have a look. Here we can see Oman and Saudi Arabia have the highest fertility rates. Or you can say Bahrain and Kuwait have the lowest fertility rates. So we can mention either one of these two. I would mention Oman and Saudi Arabia, but it doesn't matter what you mention. So I'll be mentioning. And Oman and Saudi Arabia had much higher fertility rates than other countries. Now that we've written an effective conclusion, we need to write the body paragraphs. But first we again have to look at the question graph. Now there are 2 ways to classify the data. We can write the trend of every country in 1990 in one body paragraph, or the trend of every country in 2000 in the second body paragraph. That's one way. Or we can write the trend of first 3 countries in both the years in one body paragraph, and then the trend of next 3 countries in 1990 and 2000 in the second body paragraph. So these are 2 ways. So which would you choose? I would choose the first one. That is, we'll describe the trend of every country in 1990 and then the trend of every country in 2000. Because here the data is a lot and you need to group them. And by grouping, I mean that you should classify those that are increasing in the same data, those that are decreasing in the same data, and those that are same in the same data. It will be easy not only for you to write, but also for the examiner to understand. And if we write the trend of first three countries in both the years in first body paragraph, we can group Bahrain and Kuwait. But we can't group Qatar with any country because we'll be only writing first three countries in one body paragraph. It can be grouped with UAE because both have the same fertility rates in 1990, but UAE will be discussed in the second body paragraph. So it will be a little difficult for the examiner to understand. And you should keep it in mind that coherence and cohesion is very important to score above a band 7, and you need to take care of it. It's all about making it easy for the examiner to understand. And if you go with the second way, it will be a little difficult for the examiner to understand it. So I'll be here moving with the first way. First, I'll be describing the highest fertility rate countries, that are Oman and Saudi Arabia. In 1990, Oman and Saudi Arabia had the highest rates with over 6 births per woman. Now, births per woman is like a synonym for fertility rate. Remember that you don't have to repeat the same words again and again. Try to use synonyms and paraphrase them. So now we've classified Oman and Saudi Arabia. Next, I'll go to Qatar and UAE because they also have the same fertility rates. Whereas UAE and Qatar both had a birth rate of 4.1 in 1990, as you can see in the graph. Next, we are left with Bahrain and Kuwait. They also have the same fertility rate, and according to the graph, it is 3.5. So I'll be writing, similarly, the number of children born per woman but same in both Bahrain and Kuwait at 3.5. You also should be making comparisons, like where they are similar and where they are not similar. Contrast and similarity should be discussed because it is mentioned that you should make comparisons where relevant. Also, you don't need to include every single data because the question itself says that you should describe the main features. If you just keep on describing every single thing, your band score will decrease instead of increasing. So make sure to keep that in mind. Next, we'll move to the second body paragraph, that is about the year 2000. Again, here I'll be discussing Oman and Saudi Arabia first, Qatar and UAE the second, Bahrain and Kuwait the third, because it will be easy for the examiner to understand my whole data this way. But before we write the second body paragraph, there is something similar in all countries in the year 2000. That is that the birth rate for all the countries decreased. So I'll start my body paragraph by writing, by the year 2000, the birth rate for all the countries decreased. The birth rate for Saudi Arabia and Oman shrank from nearly 7% to 5.5%, as it is mentioned in the graph. Oman has 7, Saudi Arabia has nearly 7, and both shrank to 5.5, exactly the same. Now, Qatar and UAE. We can see that their birth rate is a little above 4, and they've dropped to 3.5 for Qatar and 2.9 for UAE. So I'll be mentioning, and the fertility rate in Qatar and UAE dropped to 3.5 and 2.9 respectively. Note here that I didn't describe that both of their birth rate dropped from 4.1. I didn't write the figure 4.1 because I've already discussed it in the previous body paragraph, and also I don't want to include every single data. Bahrain and Kuwait. Their birth rate also dropped to 2.5 and 2.8 respectively. Now, instead of writing 2.5 and 2.8, I can write below 3 children per woman. Moreover, the fall in birth rate for Kuwait was similar to that of Bahrain at below 3 children per woman. Here also I described a similarity. Similar, so it's a comparison. Also here, if our examiner looks at this essay, it will be very easy for him to understand because here I've described Saudi Arabia and Oman both first in first body paragraphs, then Qatar and UAE, and finally Bahrain and Kuwait. Note here that I didn't use any complex words, just I've used some synonyms and a little bit of paraphrasing. Like instead of fertility rate, I've used birth rate, number of children born per woman, and instead of decreased, I've used dropped, shrank. I didn't mention every single data, and instead of 2.8, 2.7 describing the figures, I wrote below and above. So these are the best ways to describe things. Try to change the wording as much as possible. Wonderful. You've just learned how to write a band 9 bar chart that contains a lot of data. And if you're watching till now, thank you very much for watching. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Share it with those who need it, like those who are taking the IELTS test. And make sure to subscribe and press the bell icon so that you get notified of every video that I upload on this channel. Take care. Allah Hafiz.